Nova.
3, 4,
Yeah, we're
5.
actually gonna break all of stream rules. I'm gonna read out my full address.
I just realized something. Isn't it kind of fucked up that we all know where the White House is? Because, like, that's where your president is. Shouldn't that be a more closely protected secret?
He doesn't live there.
He does.
He fucking what?
We have an important announcement.
Shadow the Hedgehog's a bitch-ass motherfucker.
No.
He pissed on my
It's not
fucking
my
wife.
wife.
That's
Listen.
right.
We
He
have-
took
we-
his
we
hedgehog
have-
willy dick out, and he
No,
pissed on my
please.
fucking wife, and he said his dick
That
was
is
this
this
big.
big.
And
No,
I said that's
please, I
fucking.
beg.
Please
Alright,
don't tase your cats.
I am going to quickly make them exit from this room.
Was a cat.
Before I
Tase your
go
fucking
on.
cat.
Human.
Don't tase your cats. This is a PSA. Don't tase your cats.
Well,
Why do I hear a harmonica? Oh Christ.
I have to ask a question. The fuck
Yes,
was
love.
up with that, with your
My thumbnail? I just thought it was funny.
It
Dude,
is
I gotta
funny.
get on the Nova watch grind
I
set.
just thought it was funny.
It is really
That's
funny. I
pretty
was just so
much it.
confused.
I mean, I got out. I was like, oh, I haven't used a liquefy tool in a while. Turns up all the sliders.
If you could take a baby and you would not.
Yes.
I didn't even finish it!
Yeah.
Finish the question.
I don't need to know.
Yeah.
I would always kick a baby.
Kick the baby.
Always without hesitation.
I'm gonna buy the weirdest candy on Amazon. Please link me that.
Joe Biden.
Listen,
Get
Nova.
the...
Listen,
get-
Nova, he's just so hot.
No, Squiddy, get the giant laxative gummy bears. You'll be shitting for 2 days.
No.
I'll do it.
I will find the laxative gummy bears. Okay, guys, I have a copy pasta to read to you guys.
Oh.
Okay.
Alright. This review is this review is from Haribo Gummy Candy. Sugarless gummy bears, £5 a bag. Oh man, words cannot express what happened to me after eating these. The gummy bear cleanse. If you are someone that can tolerate the sugar substitutes, enjoy. If you are like the dozens of people that tried my order, run. First of all, for taste I would rate these a 5. So good. Soft, true to taste fruit flavors like the sugar variety. I was a happy camper. But, not long after eating about 20 of these, all hell broke loose.
Yeah, you
I
should
had a
eat 20 fucking
gastrointestinal
laxatives.
experience like nothing I've ever imagined. Cramps, sweating, bloating beyond my worst nightmare. I've had food poisoning from some bad shellfish and that was almost like a skip in the park compared to what was going on inside me. Then came the flatulence. Heavens to Murgatroyd, the sounds, like trumpets calling the demons back to hell.
Fuck
The
it.
stench, like
100 subs and I'll eat it.
like 1,000 rotten corpses vomited. I couldn't stand to stay in one room for fear of succumbing to my own odors. But but wait, there's more. What came out of me felt like someone tried to funnel Niagara Falls through a coffee straw. I swear my sphincters were screaming. It felt like my delicate starfish was a gaping maw projectile vomiting a torrential flood of toxic waste. 100% liquid. Flammable liquid. Napalm. It was actually a bit humorous for a nanosecond, as it was just beyond anything I could imagine possible. And it went on for hours. I felt violated when it was over, which I think might have been sometime in the early morning of the next day. There was stuff coming out of me that I ate at my wedding in 2005.
Why am I still here?
I had 5 pounds of these innocent-looking, delicious-tasting hell bears. So I told a friend about what happened to me, thinking it had to be some type of sensitivity I had to the sugar substitute. And in spite of my warnings and graphic descriptions, she decided to take her chances and take them off my hands. All the same for her, and a phone call from her while in the toilet, because you kind of end up living in the bathroom for a spell, telling me she really wished she would have listened. I think she was crying. Her sister was skeptical and suspected that we were exaggerating. She took them to work, since there was still a 99% of a £5 bag left. She works for a construction company, where there are builders, roofers, house painters, landscapers, etc. Lots of people who generally have limited access to toilets on a given day. I can't imagine where all those poor men and women pooped that day. I keep envisioning men on roofs crossing their legs and trying to decide if they can make it down the ladder or if they should just jump. If you order these, best of luck to you. And please don't post a video review during the aftershocks. Was this review helpful to you, yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
have a
agree.
loser.
I want to buy
Okay,
them.
I'm gonna read some more.
Of course.
I want to hear one. I would like to hear one.
No. I see you considering purchasing these. A fun little prank to play on your digestional tract. These are Satan bears. Myself and a few buddies, after laughing about some reviews, decided to buy some. Weapon storage was all it was. The package came a few days later and we chuckled and tried some. These motherfuckers are fabulous. The taste is like having a package of Skittles pee on your taste buds. Truly astounding. So, as they are delicious, I decided to eat a few more.
A true
And-
wordsmith.
And then some more. Nothing really happened that night. A little bloating, some discomfort, nothing to fret about. So, praising the 9 that I must have been one who can tolerate the sugar substitute, when I got to work the next day, I sat down with a bowl and chowed down.
Oh, the fucking sugar-free gummy bears.
That night. Oh God, forgive that night. I was glued to the toilet seat. Streams of fire burst from my colon. When I... when I wasn't experiencing Satan's fury exploding from my rear, I was laying in the fetal position on my bathroom floor, sobbing and asking for forgiveness. I'm a 280-pound man. I was sobbing. When it was finally over, I couldn't move. I crawled onto the floor one last time and sat, motionless, until my dehydration finally required that I drink water. The other reviews are perfectly accurate. This is absolutely 100% true. Eat 2 at a time. 3 if you're brave. But for the love of God and all things on this earth, do not eat anymore.
Fuck it. You guys already did your thing.
Wait, no, hear me out. There's a 5-star review that just says I sneezed
What's
out
it
my
called?
butthole.
That's why I said I'm gonna make it the 15. I'm gonna make it the 15 sub goal.
No.
Oh no.
Oh my
bro.
God. 3 stars. I'm pretty sure I lost a kidney. I nearly I nearly shat myself inside out.
Oh my god.
Pretty sure I crapped out a kidney or my spleen. I definitely had the distinctive ching of that penny I swallowed back in '82. And I can fit back into the jeans I wore in high school. See you in
Yeah,
hell,
I'm still gonna call
Haribo
it
sugar-free. Oh, guys, I have a long one. I found a long one.
Oh.
Okay, here we go. Are you guys
and-
ready?
and-
It was my last class of the semester, and the final exam was worth 30% of our grade. After a late night study session, I felt confident, but I had to decide between sleeping in or cooking breakfast. My eyelids chose sleep. My stomach later regretted this decision, and after several uncomfortable stomach growls, I finally decided to make a quick stop by the campus bookstore and grab a snack before my test. Since the semester was ending and everyone was going home for the summer, a lot of items were on sale, including the snacks and candy that they kept up front. Being in my
Shut the fuck up, demo.
being in the hungry state that I was in, it felt only logical to pick the largest yet least expensive candy in order to get more bang for my buck. And there they sat. 2 bags of Haribo sugar-free gummy bears. Buy 1, get 1 free. What a deal, I thought naively. I would eat 1 bag before my test, and 1 bag afterwards. As I walked to class, I gleefully chewed on those abominable little bastards, unaware of the utter mayhem that they would soon unleash upon my poor, poor anus. I sat down at my desk as the professor informed us that, due to issues with cheating in the past, restroom breaks would be prohibited until the completion of the exam. I'll give you 10 minutes to use the restroom now. This will be your last chance. Any takers? The demon bears hadn't released their unholy necromancy upon my stomach yet, so in my moment of ignorant foolishness, I remained seated, still munching on those miniature bear-shaped bombs. After the students wise enough to take the professor's offer had returned, the professor handed out the test. I was 6 questions in when it happened.
Ooh.
It started subtly at first, almost like a slight tingly sensation in my lower abdomen. I thought nothing of it, assuming my intestines were just doing their thing.
Those men just
Little did I know that my intestines were trying desperately to warn me of the horror that was on the horizon. By question 9 it happened again, but this time it was followed by a sharp pain, as if those infernal hellions had orchestrated an attack upon my colon. I fought to contain the groan that tried escaping my lips.
after this.
It was at this point I began to panic. Something was going horribly wrong. Horribly wrong. And I needed to get through this test before it got any worse.
Like nobody's
By question
lives, I don't-
14, my worst fear was upon me. The Satan bears' burning, hot, liquidy, dark magic crashed against my anal sphincter like a tidal wave. I I was able to close the hatch just in time, but those relentless, toxic bears beat against it like orcs breaking down the doors of Helm's Deep. I knew I wouldn't be able to so much as shift in my seat without risking a breach. I kept fighting through my exam, clenching my cheeks with all my might. Beads of sweat began rolling down my neck. Suddenly, a loud, gurgling war cry came from my belly, and the entire class lifted their heads. At this point, nothing mattered except expelling this ungodly presence from my bowels. With 15 questions left, I promptly wrote C for every answer and ran out of the classroom. My professor yelled something, but I was too preoccupied with the volcanic eruption that needed to take place before I could find sweet relief. I burst into the restroom like the Kool-Aid man, and behold, the handicapped stall was empty. Sun rays from the adjacent window shone upon it as if it were a gift from God himself. It took me less than 0.5 seconds to undo my belt buckle, pull down my pants, and finally relax my weary buttocks upon the toilet seat. It took absolutely no effort to expel this demon. Almost immediately, the floodgates of hell were open and the damned liquefied souls of an entire bag's worth of gummy bears cried as they burned through my sphincter and into the watery abyss below. I'd never felt such simultaneous relief and anguish in my life. After 30 more minutes of this, I immediately went home, dug a hole in my backyard, and burned the remaining bag of gummy bears. I leave with this. Do not, I repeat, do not eat these spawn of Satan. Not only did they cause me to fail my initial test, but the anguish I experienced is something I wouldn't wish upon anyone, not even my worst enemy. The only place these godforsaken hellbears belong are buried deep below the Earth's surface. 17,823 people found this helpful.
17,000.
This is a short one, but it is strong. 1 star. Case great. End results were not. This is not a warning. This will cause your rectum. God damn it. God damn it. This will cause your rectum to enter turbo mode and empty your entire life out your rear.
Oh no.
You can try eating these in moderation. You can try waiting days between eating them. It doesn't matter what you try. They are inevitable. They will destroy you from the inside out. On the plus side, these are the best laxatives you can buy. Seriously cleanses the entire colon. Want to lose 5 pounds in 5 minutes? Just eat a bunch of these and wait for the results. That's it.
Oh my god! I found a really long one. Like a really long one.
We don't need to read the long one.
Please. Okay. 1 star. Hell holds no surprises for me anymore. This is a cautionary tale, and unlike most of the other reviews on this product, this is a true story and its authenticity can be qualified by a small news item that appeared in the Toronto Star's local news section during the month of April in 2013, much to my chagrin. I would consider myself a prudent man. Not given to bouts of outspokenness or craving attention, and certainly not one to rock the boat. On any given day, I can be found reading a crime novel on a park bench in the middle of the city, soaking in the opulence of nature while nibbling on my tuna fish sandwiches, and fending off the voracious gulls and squirrels that threaten to spoil my repose. This is me. Hiding and introspective, which is why it came as a shock to me to find myself incarcerated because of the devil's confectionery, Satan's sweetmeat, Lucifer's lozenges, the horror that is known as Haribo sugar-free gummy bears. I'll set the scene. It was late winter or early spring in Toronto, and the city had just been digging itself out from a late-season snowstorm. I was heading to Pearson International Airport for a red-eye flight to Amsterdam in order to give the Dutch arm of our company some training on the new software that had been installed. I'm deliberately being vague to prevent my place of work from being linked in any way to the incident that occurred. I had just finished packing, checked the time, and found I was running late. My flight was at 10 past 7, and it was now almost 5. Cursing softly, I ran out to the car and threw my bags in the trunk, hitting the gas a little harder than usual in my haste to make it to the long-term parking lot as soon as possible. Luckily, traffic was light on the 401 and I made it to the airport in record time, but knew that my chances of making the flight were still at risk if I didn't use my time wisely. Hold up.
Bro, right out of spawn!
Good grief. I hadn't eaten since lunch, and I was feeling a bit hungry, my stomach rumbling loudly in protestation, which caused me to look around at the other travellers rushing past me in the busy terminal, mortified that my bodily noises might be heard by others. I briskly checked my watch and decided that I had enough time to grab a quick snack before going through the baggage check and security, and would get something more substantial once I was checked through security. I spotted a vending machine nestled in a relatively low-traffic corner of the terminal and rushed over, already pulling out my credit card and mentally assessing what I had a craving for, so as to save time interacting with the machine. My eyes scanned the colourful array of confection quickly, coming to rest on a tantalising, rainbow-coloured bag of gummy bears with a simple white and red logo, Haribo, emblazoned across the bag in what appeared to be a slightly tweaked Helvetica rounded font. Oh my god, nerdy, this one has so many parts. Now I'd pause here in the story for a moment to underscore the importance of making proper choices. I was hungry. When you're hungry, you should eat food. Food is defined as a nutritious substance that people consume to maintain life. This is what food is. These days, the definition of the word food has been bastardized, and the meaning has been broadened to include veritably any material that can be digested, or rather, chewed and swallowed without causing death or severe illness. Haribo sugar-free gummy bears are not food. They aren't even from this planet. I imagine their origins being conceived in a boardroom in hell by a top team of creative pain administrators, with senior-level demons rubbing their hands together in ghoulish delight as Hell's chief chemist slowly lifts the veil on a new creation. The point here being, I made a very, very, very poor choice. I pushed the button and the vending machine ejected the brightly coloured bag into my waiting hands. I'd always liked gummy bears. They were bright, but rather innocuous. They weren't overly sweet, so as to become cloying, and, of course, each candy came in the visage of a rather happy, docile bear, reminiscent of the picture one's mind's eye holds of all anthropomorphic bears from Yogi to Winnie. The way I figured it, I was taking a bit of a holiday from life so I could relax my fastidiously regimented daily schedule a little to allow for some frivolity. After all, I was going to be in Amsterdam come morning with 16 hours to kill before I had to be training the Dutch employees. Maybe I would take a trip down to one of the coffee shops in the red light district and really let my hair down. No, I wouldn't do that. I would see that area of the city from the bus as I went to the hotel where I would eat at the hotel restaurant and drink sparkling water. So I'd better enjoy the gummy bears, my one extravagance to commemorate my break from routine. I joined the queue in the KLM line, which was mercifully short, most likely because all of the passengers for my flight had already been checked through, as the flight was scheduled to depart in an hour. I checked my watch again, frowned, and absent-mindedly opened the bag of Haribo sugar-free gummy bears. I began to munch on them as the line slowly advanced. To be fair, they tasted fine, just like every other manufacturer's brand of the colourful candy, and they were sugar-free to boot. This is what made the whole instant that followed so baffling. If they had tasted off or different, I most likely wouldn't have continued to shovel them into my mouth absent-mindedly while daydreaming about what I would order to eat from room service in my hotel in Amsterdam. As I gave the attendant my e-ticket and she weighed my bags, the first of the pains began in my stomach. I thought nothing of it at first, chalking it up to the fact that I needed something more substantial than gummy worms to tackle my hunger. But over the course of the next 5 minutes, the shooting pain began to come in more rapid succession. At this point, I had my boarding pass printed, and rubbing my stomach a little, I proceeded to security. I briefly entertained the thought of trying to find a restroom before going through security, but at that point my discomfort was manageable, and I didn't think it was going to get any worse, certainly not within the amount of time it would take to clear security. Oh, it's so long.
Yeah, it's an essay!
Yeah, it's worth it. I joined the line and started fishing for my passport to present to the agent checking tickets. I felt a thin sheet of sweat break out on my forehead and underarms, and my features flushed for a moment as a wave of heat washed over me. I didn't pay it much heed, as going through security always caused me great anxiety, and I chalked it up to pre-flight jitters. It was only as I stood face to face with the agent and handed her my passport and ticket that I had a glimpse of the agony that was about to begin. It felt like time rippled for a moment, as if my consciousness buckled, so intense was the pain that fired through my bowels. I grimaced spastically and emitted a low moan, and felt myself take an involuntary step sideways. Stars shot through my head briefly, my vision blurred and then snapped back into focus. The agent was staring at me with slight consternation and asked me if I was alright. I pulled myself together, stood up straight, and declared that I was fine, mortified that I had had a lapse of decorum not only in public, but at the security clearance in an airport. As I fumbled off my belt to go through the metal detector, the pain in my stomach increased, and I practically had to sit on the floor to take my shoes off, terrified of what would happen if I bent at the middle to do it. It was becoming increasingly more evident to me that this wasn't just a stomachache. No, this was something much worse. As a child, I had had a bout of diarrhea after a trip to Mexico with my family. I remember the feeling of nausea that swept through me before my child self had surrendered to the gas pains and parked myself on the toilet for an hour, shitting until I felt like I didn't have any bones left. And that was how I was feeling now, with several key differences. The pain was worse, the sense of an impending bowel movement was so formidable it gave me temporary amnesia, and it took all of my willpower, all of it, to clench my butt cheeks together to prevent my sphincter from exploding. A sudden shock of pain racked my body, and I half wondered if I was going to give birth to a Tasmanian devil. The crazy, fever-induced image of said cartoon animal chasing Bugs Bunny through the splashy volcanic shit kettle that was my stomach caused me to elicit a short, maniacal bark of laughter as I approached the metal detector, a wild, distant look in my eyes, sweat now beginning to pour off of my long... Oh, Jesus, dude, you can't spell. Beginning to pour off of me like a long-distance runner in Kenya. The security agent on the other side of the detector shot a quick glance over to her co-worker, who narrowed his eyes and made a subtle movement towards his holster. My breathing became uneven as I entered the metal detector, and I realized with alarm that I had taken off my socks without even registering it, and one of my shirt tails was untucked at the front. I held my breath, my eyes bulging dangerously from my head as the machine scanned me. As I shakily moved forwards towards the agent for a pat-down, my stomach began to elicit sounds that could only be described as otherworldly. It started off as a sort of bubbling sound, heard from afar, and grew in pitch and intensity at an alarming rate. My jaw dropped in shock as what I can only describe as the sound of an agonized wailing alley cat in heat with a persistent Doppler effect added to its voice emitted from some nether region of my intestines. The officer's eyes widened in alarm, and she kept her eyes glued to my stomach as she thoroughly patted me down. As she reached my shins, I felt my innards suddenly expand and plummet towards my rectum. Oh, Jesus. Not this one. Not that one, the next one. With cat-like reflexes, I squeezed my sphincter shut with what seemed like nanoseconds to spare, and I knew that if I didn't get to the bathroom immediately, I would shit myself. With the Herculean effort and all of the strength that I could muster, I forced my butt cheeks together, knowing that one false move would open the floodgates. I began to walk like a duck, trying to remain as inconspicuous as possible, not even caring now what other people were seeing in front of them. A disheveled, barefoot 40-year-old businessman, red-faced and bulgy-eyed, sweating profusely, shaking slightly and walking without bending his knees. With single-minded intensity, I grabbed my carry-on shoes and socks from out the plastic tub that had passed the X-ray inspection, and without putting anything back on, I turned on my heels with the intention of finding the nearest restroom and slowly dying there one squirt at a time. But that's not what happened. I turned to go and found myself staring at 3 armed agents who stopped me and asked if I would follow them. Why? What's the matter? I stammered, wincing slightly as the act of speech seemed to strain the tenuous and extremely fragile truce I had negotiated between my bowels and the tempest that raged within. I have to go to the bathroom right now, I pleaded. Just follow us, please, they said, leaving no room for argument. The other travellers clearing the security check stared with curiosity and revulsion at the spectacle unfolding before them, whispering amongst themselves and hurrying to pack up their belongings and get as far away from me as possible, no doubt assuming that the airport had nabbed some sort of domestic terrorist. If I hadn't been feverishly trying to hold back the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, I likely would have died of shame. With each step I took towards the room that they ushered me into, I felt that my legs would give way. I marveled at how strong the human will could be. Marveled at what was essentially patching a hole in the Hoover Dam with bubblegum could actually be sustained indefinitely. Maybe I would make it through this ordeal after all. The room they brought me into was an examination room. I had pretty much stopped registering details of my environment as my consciousness had closed off all but the absolutely necessary functions. Breathing, ability to walk. But I snapped back to reality when I heard the snap of rubber. The slow, dawning realization poked through my abdomen. And stoic resolve as I turned to face an agent donning rubber gloves.
Oh,
Sir,
no.
we are going to perform a cavity search on you. A young, fresh-faced agent stated in a firm but emotionless voice. His short-cropped blonde hair was immaculate, and for a crazy moment I wondered if he was an actor and this was all some sort of elaborate practical joke done to amuse bored kids watching YouTube.
Alright, hold on. Really quick, I'm gonna actually end stream here.
He must have taken my tortured silence for resistance because he looked at me sharply and said, "Lower your pants and underwear, please," and faced the desk. Panic started to grip me in its icy grasp, and the sudden adrenaline threatened to destroy my sphincter's bulwarks and rend my anus in two. I inhaled sharply, and with a pained gasp I doubled up my efforts to clench my cheeks together. "Sir, please," I begged, deferring to this kid in an act of desperation. I have to go to the bathroom. You can follow me into the store if you need to, but I had some bad Haribo sugar-free gummy bears, and now I feel like... But they had stopped listening and smirked at each other, two of the other agents. A tall, dark-haired female and a shorter, balding, fat man looked away from me, and I could see them shaking a little as they stifled their laughs. Sir, face the wall, put your hands on the desk, and... The young agent stated, a lopsided grin on his face. But I began to protest, and then a fresh shock of pain forced me to stop and lean on the table for support as an ungodly howling rose from my stomach. Something between the dying moans of a woolly mammoth and the sound of bubble wrap popping underwater. I exhaled shakily and my focus began to narrow as I rallied for the final battle. Shaking uncontrollably and sweat literally raining down onto the tabletop in front of me, I turned to face the wall and heard a meek, childlike voice pleading from somewhere in the room. Please, it said. Then again, please. From somewhere within me, my mind recognized that this sound had issued from me, although my consciousness had now begun to separate from my body, and I held my breath and prayed to God for strength. He probably has some heroin or something up there that opened up, the female guard said, as a part of me that hadn't escaped into the ether yet acknowledged that she was behind me to my left. Probably high as a kite, look at him, she said. The shorter guard agreed with the snore off to my right. Spread your cheeks, the young agent said, his voice directly behind me and lower than the other two, and bend over. Please God, please God, please God, please God, I whispered in a desperate maniacal mantra, not even aware of my surroundings anymore. I felt like I was lost in an opium fog with half-snatched images and sounds filtering through to create a nonsensical version of reality. Another volley of pain tore through me and I involuntarily leaned forward over the desk, my focus completely narrowed to a spot on the wall 2 feet in front of me, a curious imperfection in the what seemed to be whitewashed stone wall. It was a dark blotch about 5 millimeters long and shaped like a smiling bear, a yellow dancing bear. No, a green bear. No, red. It was all the colors of the rainbow. My God, it was beautiful. It just took something as simple as a slight breeze to trigger Armageddon. That's all. No trumpets, no fanfare, no fire raining from the heavens, no dogs and cats living together in harmony, no finger on the button, no prophet to predict it, no nothing. As I stared at the rainbow bear smiling and dancing in front of me, my mouth agape, drooling, eyes glazed and bloodshot, face coated with a sheen of sweat, I heard the softest sound, an exhalation from the young agent behind me, and then at the same instant the warm air of his breath feather across my butt cheeks. For just a moment, maybe less, maybe a split second, even a nanosecond, I felt the presence of God there with me in that room as stars began to misfire at a blinding rate. Nerve ending bristled and muscles twitched reflexively. I stood on the brink with 1 foot hovering over the edge, and then without taking a step, I found myself plummeting. With a... oh Jesus. With a sound like an extra large plastic ketchup bottle being run over by a Mack truck, my sphincter released. The pressure of the blast pushed me hard into the desk, and the leg of the desk screeched as they scraped across the floor. My body remained rigid for a moment and I experienced a relief that can only be described as orgasmic in its purity. My eyes rolled back in my head and my tongue lolled out of my head like a half-retarded dog, and I emitted a low, sustained groan that grew in pitch as the filthy torrent pushed its way out of my body. Tremors racked my body and it must have looked like a fish out of water with an endless stream of shit firing out of its ass. Other sounds and sensations started to filter in now as my consciousness began to materialize once more. The muffled scream of a dungeon filled with prisoners near death radiated from my stomach. The rushing sound of liters of liquid trying to escape through an aperture too small to accommodate it all at the same time. The omnipresent sound of chunky liquid spattering against a hard surface with great force. The high-pitched screaming of a woman's voice calling out to God. Another voice sobbing uncontrollably, imploring to make it stop, and my own ecstatic monotone wail. When my ordeal had finally run its course, I was left panting for breath and wobbly-legged, half crying, half laughing with relief, barely lucid and feeling as if I had birthed an elephant. My colon felt like someone had poured chili sauce all over it and then sent in a colony of fire ants to eat it. Through my sobs I heard the sound of dripping, like when the sprinklers are eventually turned off after an office fire. Or after a thunderstorm when the willow that overhangs the pond continues to rain down long after the sky has stopped. From behind me, the sobbing continued and I heard someone trying to speak into a walkie-talkie but nonsensical words were all that the man could speak, which sounded like the ravings of a lunatic. With great relief, I slowly pulled myself off the table, legs trembling, my stomach eliciting one last sound, a loud, prolonged gas bubbling that eerily resembled a pig orgasm. What the fuck? What the fuck?
That's a new one.
I'm just gonna... Okay, out of everything in it, that's what... Yeah, no, okay, moving on. I slowly turned my head to survey the devastation, and in that instant, if I had had a pencil or some other sharp object, I probably would have gouged my eyes out in revulsion. And the smell. The smell was enough to drive a man insane. It was the stench of rotting potatoes mixed with sulfur and ammonia, cooked in a broth of chicken feces and left to age for 2 weeks in a yeasty stew at the bottom of a French outhouse. After half a whiff of this ghoulish brine, I immediately stopped breathing through my nose, but the taste was to remain in the back of my throat for months to come. The young agent had taken the brunt of the foul witch's brew, and at first I couldn't process what I was seeing. I thought somehow the young blonde kid had been spirited away and replaced by a brown golem or an ATV rider that had spent the better part of a day driving through every mud puddle they could find after a torrential downpour. With some degree of compartmentalization, I came to understand that for some unfathomable reason this kid hadn't moved, or hadn't been able to move through the entire fecal deluge.
No.
He had weathered the entire assault head-on like some sort of hero from Greek mythology.
No.
I'd given this poor schmuck a one-man shit bukkake that would make a Brazilian pornographer retch with disgust, and he was still in the same position he must have been from the moment of first impact. I tried to comprehend. Oh Jesus Christ! I tried to comprehend how he must be feeling, what he must be going through psychologically, but it became evident very quickly that he had become very broken. No doubt forced so deeply within himself once the fire hose had been turned on that there was little to no hope of him ever coming back from it. Certainly not without extensive psychotherapy or a lobotomy. I looked. Oh shit. I looked beyond his quivering, catatonic, crouched form to see a perfect outline of him cut out on the white wall behind him, either side filled in with a dripping, opaque layer of alternately pulpy and runny fecal stew. I noticed 2 quivering masses at either extremes of the room and realized they were humanoid in form, although the caterwauling that was coming from these broken creatures was just blubbering gibberish. And this was the tableau that was burnt into my mind's eye for eternity. Needless to say, I missed my flight. In fact, the next week is a blur. I have vague recollections of an army of hazmat-clad figures looming through the brown landscape of the soiled room, the slopping sounds of the rubber boats squelching in puddles of fetid detritus, uncontrolled wailing and animal-like sounds issuing from the mouths of creatures that had been traumatized beyond their capacity for being put back together, the complete loss of sensation from my waist down as I was rolled through the room on a waterproof gurney, its wheels struggling to surf on top of the shit-soaked floor. I spent a week or so in the hospital enclosed in a well-ventilated, sealed room, with suited doctors coming in on the hour to monitor my vital signs as they tried to rehydrate my body. I had apparently expelled every available drop of water from my body that was possible to sustain life without for a short period of time. All of my clothes were incinerated in the hospital's crematorium, and the soiled bag of Haribo sugar-free gummy bears was never recovered. This is my story. It is inconceivable to think that this kind of product can be sold legally and be misrepresented as food. I was lucky. I survived. But as for the families of the survivors and the survivors themselves, they will forever live with the trauma of the events that took place at Pearson International Airport on that snowy day in April 2013. Ladies and gentlemen, it is past midnight.
Absolutely amazing.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Did you get an Oscar for that? I think you should.
My vocal cords are a little roughed up.
Jesus Christ.
Well,